is Dylan from TeachingEntrepreneurship.org, and today we have the pleasure of bringing you another new amazing exercise. This one has to do with encouraging your students to think a little more creatively so that they can come up with bigger and more impactful and feasible ideas. This exercise is going to be presented by Jim Hart. He is the Director of Arts Entrepreneurship and also currently the Interim Chair of Arts Management and Arts Entrepreneurship at Southern Methodist University. So today I'm happy to welcome Jim and talk a little bit more about this exercise in creativity.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Good. So today we're gonna go through an exercise that Jim's calling it in my mind's eye Horatio, and you can find the exercise right on the TeachingEntrepreneurship.org blog, and then we'll talk a little bit later about some of the resources that Jim has and places you can find this and a lot of the other good work he's doing. So, but to set a little bit of the background on you, Jim, and sort of where you came from, why you're here, give us kind of an overview of what led you into sort of entrepreneurship professor domain and why passion about this particular area, specifically arts entrepreneurship.
Okay. Classically trained as an artist, as a theater artist. Went to SMU where I teach now, and it's a tremendous training program. And out of school, went to Yale School of Drama. It's arguably the best in the country for theatrical training. And despite this incredible training, when I got out of school, I struggled to make a living because that skill wasn't taught. But it was all arts technique and no real business skill. I eventually taught myself how to survive and self-produce and make a living from my creativity. But it was difficult, and it was I ran into a lot of walls and hit my head against those walls a number of times. And I thought, if I ever had the opportunity to create a program or create a school, I would address this entrepreneurial component because truly this is the missing puzzle piece of arts education, what I call how to make a living part, right? And as life would have it, I ended up building a school, moved to Oslo, Norway, and had the chance to do this and built a 2-year accredited conservatory for theatrical training that was based in theater entrepreneurship, so arts entrepreneurship. And developed that, owned it for close to a decade. And then this opportunity at SMU came up. But it's a passion because I know that creatives and artists, they need this. And I find it problematic that, and this is changing at a rapid pace, but still to this day, people are paying a lot of money to go to school and train as artists, but they're not being how to survive as artists. So that's something that I have a great passion for and why I got into this.
And I think it seems to be a good fit. I'm not really familiar with the arts area, but I mean, it seems to be a really good fit with kind of your approach and my approach and other people's approach of very experiential, right? And lots of learning by doing. And I mean, it just seems to be a good marriage of that as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Art is very much like entrepreneurship in that you can research what it is to be an entrepreneur, and you will gain potentially a phenomenal intellectual understanding of what it is to be an entrepreneur. Gotcha. But if you want to know what it is to be an entrepreneur, you got to do it, right? And the same is true of art. You can research around it. If you want to be an artist, you got to create art.
So you got to get up on the stage, right, and do your thing, or build a stage or something.
Exactly. You gotta experience it. So with that in mind, some of our classes have restrictions on what we can accomplish in, say, a Monday, Wednesday class that's 50 minutes, and the university have restrictions on accumulation of cash, and, for-profit entities in a nonprofit environment, and this sort of thing. So with that in mind, I wanted to create a series of exercises that enabled students to have experiences. To gain a sense of what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it is to be an entrepreneur, and yet still be able to do so within the confines of a university course schedule.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, I've always been a big fan of what you're doing, so it's a pleasure to share a little bit more of what's going on. So let's jump into it, right? So we got this exercise. I've sort of asked you to kind of come up with an exercise that not only can we talk about, but we actually can sort of demonstrate, right, and actually do it. So talk a little bit about what you think, what's kind of the goal of this, like why this exercise, and as a student, what am I going to get out of this going through this exercise?
Okay. I believe that entrepreneurship is a highly creative endeavor. And what I mean by that is we're creating jobs and economic stimulus and products and services and culture, and you can go on and on.
Yeah.
So it is a creative activity. When I go across the street to the business school, and this varies from the art school. A lot of artists consider themselves creatives, and
Yeah.
they are. But when I go to the business school and I poll the students, how many of you identify yourselves as creative? I get very few hands raised, maybe 20% of the room.
Yeah.
That's problematic if they're going to be entrepreneurs, because they're going to have to create a business and all the things that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So if the students aren't self-identifying as creatives and they're not creating, consequently, that becomes problematic. So we need to get them to start creating, and this exercise is addressed as one component of creativity. So I'll stop there and shift gears for a second.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurship begins with an idea. And in order to engage stakeholders, inspire investors, etc., we need to be really clear about what our idea is. We need to have a vision, if you will,
right.
For this idea. Creativity is linked to the imagination. And the imagination is stimulated by impulses. And I think everyone knows what an impulse is. It's something we feel. I like to describe it as a lightning quick voice that says, do this, do this, do this.
Right.
A lot of my students communicate about their fears. And when we unpack what they're afraid of, very often it's not me and my judgment of them, except as pertains to their grade.
Right.
They're not living up to their own expectations, their parents' expectations, feeling foolish in front of their peers.
Yeah.
Well, if you're afraid of feeling foolish in front of your peers, the chances are you're not going to realize a lot of the creative impulses you feel in the process of engaging in these exercises, because you might be fearful of being judged.
Yeah.
And if you are and you stifle those impulses, you're censoring yourself, and your potential for vision may not be realized. So this exercise teaches students how to recognize, one, what an impulse feels like, and two, to follow it without first judging it, or whether it's a good or bad impulse, right or wrong. To follow it without judging it or fearing it. The imagination, in turn, can play with impulses, and play is directly linked to the imagination. As children, we play in our imaginations all the time. And that's an important part of ideation, I believe, and creation in general. So the way this exercise works, it's based on an improvisation exercise, a theatrical improvisation exercise. And I've looked for the source, and I can't find who originated this, but it's an old game that I played 20 years ago. It's called What Are You Doing? So I'll explain the game momentarily, but I want to talk about the title of this game and the why of the title.
Yeah, please.
So, okay. This exercise is called In My Mind's Eye, Horatio. And this is a quote from Hamlet. And I think it beautifully illustrates the imagination and how one can think about the imagination. So at this point in the play, Horatio, this guy is Hamlet's best friend. And we know that Hamlet's dad is dead, the king, and the ghost of Hamlet's dad appears, and Horatio sees this ghost, okay, and he's really freaked out about it, and he wants to tell Hamlet. So he's later, after seeing the ghost, with Hamlet in a different scene, and Hamlet's brooding and lamenting the loss of his father, and Hamlet says, "Methinks I see my father," and Horatio says, "Where, my lord?" Because he has seen him, right?
Yeah.
And Hamlet says, "In my mind's eye, Horatio," right? And so I like this image of an eye within your mind.
Yeah.
right? And that we see in our mind, and we see pictures. And in Hamlet's case, it's the image of his father. So this is a really great image of one's imagination and how we can guide students to really see their creative visions so that they can articulate them and they can build upon them.
Okay.
So back to the exercise called "What Are You Doing?" I guarantee everyone in class, before playing this, I say, all of you are going to look absolutely foolish in this process. I'm going to guarantee it. All right. So the only way you will truly look foolish is if you don't participate, because you'll be the standout.
Yeah.
Right. Like you'll be drawing focus to yourself because everyone else will be participating. So
right.
Dive in, allow yourself to look foolish. And I'm going to encourage that of you. None of you are going to be graded on this exercise. It's for experience sake. So in part, this exercise is meant to boggle the mind. Okay. It's in some measure meant to confuse. We want to get students away from premeditating on what they might say, but instead just to allow that voice of do this, the impulse, to arise and then articulate it, right? And this can surface in brainstorming environments and in other ways. So here's how you play. Don, you're going to be A, and I'm going to be B, okay? And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say, what are you doing? And you're going to tell me an activity that you're doing. For example, you might say, eating a banana, okay? So you go ahead and do that. I'll say, we'll start. Don, what are you doing?
Eating a banana.
Okay, and then I start miming that I'm eating the banana. Okay, then you say to me, what are you doing? So
what
go
are
ahead
you doing,
and
Jim?
do that. Now, even though I'm miming eating a banana, I say something completely opposite of what I'm miming doing. I say, I'm driving a car, or whatever comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you start miming driving a car. So go ahead and do that. And then I say, Don, what are you doing? And immediately, whatever comes to mind, say it. Ready, go.
Walking my dog.
Okay. So now I'm walking my dog. And then you say,
Jim, what are you doing?
I'm eating peanut butter. So you start eating peanut butter. What are you doing?
Electrocuting myself.
Okay, so then you say,
Jim, what are you doing?
I'm flying over the moon. So you start flying over the moon. Don, what are you doing?
Going to the bathroom.
Okay, I often do that one because it's really funny. Right?
Just because you have to throw that in, right? That's always a good one.
And if they do that, I won't ask them what they're doing. I'll just pause.
That's good.
But, yeah. So on and on this game goes. Okay, and I have students stand up in a circle, so they have to be actively participating.
Yeah.
So A and B will continue to do this on and on and on until someone, you're out. Okay, so if someone pauses too long, they're out. Okay, and then someone else.
And so the idea here is for the students, and so it's just one pair at a time doing it. It's not
Correct.
10 pairs. I mean, it's one pair, and then when they get to that pause, then they're out.
That's correct. And the person who gets to the pause is out.
Yeah.
The other person who continues to go stays in.
Okay.
So they do this on and on and on. And what typically happens in the class is that students worry about what the others are thinking,
right?
And they are consistently booted out of the exercise. So I like to tell them about Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai. Have you seen this movie?
I have. Yes. Yeah.
The Last Samurai. Okay, so Tom is he's an American warrior. I think it's during the Civil War, and he's brought to Japan to fight to beat the samurai. Okay, and but he's captured by the samurai, and they take him back to their samurai camp, and it's in the midst of the mountains. He doesn't know where he is. Winter comes, and they're like, "Look, you're not leaving until the snow melts. Chill out, right?" And so he's there, and eventually, they start teaching him the samurai ways, and they give him a wooden sword, and they spar with him. And even though he's a great warrior in America with his own sword, he can't compete with the samurai, and so he's beaten consistently, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Okay, so after some period of time, one of the samurai comes up to Tom and says, and I'm going to paraphrase, he says, "You're minding too much." Tom looks confused. He says, "You're minding then, right? You're minding this in the sword, no mind." Okay, so this is a very Japanese thought. They call it mushi, to create from a place of unconscious thought. But there's tremendous benefit. And a lot of artists find this state of mind when they're creating, where they stop judging, they stop analyzing, and they just create. They just play, right? Children find this when they lose all track of time in playing. And, there's many activities that people probably experienced and to experience this phenomenon, but that's ideally where we want to get, right? So we're not judging, right? We're not minding, if what we're going to say is funny, right? Which many students worry about, or anything else. We're simply going to focus on the impulse, okay? So after a period of time, I say, okay, let's stop. I'm going to teach you a technique that will enable you to consistently play, and you're going to dramatically expand the length of time in which you're going to be able to stay in the game. And here's how you do it. And this is why we're doing it. We're going to see in our mind's eye an image that pops up on your mental movie screen. So let's imagine we're at the movies, okay? You're alone in the movie theater. You've got a movie screen before you.
Yep.
I'm going to say a word, and you're going to allow it to pop into your mind.
Okay.
Okay, so, I typically start with apple. Now, you may have seen a green apple or a red apple or even the corporation, right?
Yes.
Everyone's going to see something different in their mind. So, in the process of entrepreneurship, we want to be as specific as possible, as we want to clarify what it is we're thinking. And oftentimes that's why we, offer a prototype, be able to show.
Right.
But until then, let's get clear in our own thoughts. And we can do that by trying to see that apple in 3D and as clear as possible.
Yeah.
So, Dylan, you're at the movies.
Yep.
And the movie screen is before your mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to say an image, and I just want you to tell me, got it, when you've got the image in your mind. Ready?
Yep.
Tire. Cool. Desk.
Got it.
Blue sky.
Got it.
Birds.
Got it.
Samurai.
Got it.
Okay, cool. So now this is part A of this little technique.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go back to apple. Okay. So if I say apple, I want you to associate an action with that apple. So if I said apple, what's an activity you do with an apple?
Eat.
Yeah. So you say, I'm eating an apple.
Okay.
Okay. And then if we said car before, if I said, if you imagine a car, you'd say, I'm driving a car.
Yep.
So you simply allow in a stream consciousness fashion, just anything to pop up in your head, and immediately, without judging it, without fearing it, without pausing, you just associate an action, you just keep going. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
So let's play again.
All right.
Okay, you ready? Okay. And it does take some practice with this, and I'll play this exercise for nearly the entire class, and eventually the time length gets longer and longer and longer. But let's try.
Now, like this part, you're doing this with the entire class, or are you focusing with one student? Like, so you're having the whole class?
Okay, so that's a good question. I'm focusing on the entire class, and as they're still standing in a circle, I'll go around to each student and I'll present a noun. Right? And so I'll say, and I'll say shoe, and they nod when they see it in their mind's eye. And then I go back again, and when I say an image, fishing pole, they have to associate an action. I'm going fishing. Okay, good. And once they're able to do this, I do this again and again and again and again and again until they're really free flowing with their ideas, and they're able to articulate something very quickly. Yeah. Then we go back into the what are you doing? And what I find is that their times do dramatically expand. Yeah. So, in this idea, it's not to be able to play this game. That's not the point of the exercise. Sure. The point of the exercise is to follow your impulses and allow yourself to get into this sort of stream of consciousness, fashion where you allow anything to pop up in your head and you just follow it without first judging it. So eventually this will lead us into the pitch process where I ask them, to be super, super clear about literally everything you say. So back to Shakespeare. Okay, so Shakespeare is, a very difficult language to perform. And a
Yeah.
lot of actors, they struggle like mad to make sense of this language, which is frankly quite antiquated in many ways. So when I was at Yale, the way they taught us to act this is to literally have an image for every word you say. So in my mind, Horatio, right? Or
Right.
in my mind's eye, Horatio. And so you have like a film strip of images in your mind as you're communicating these words. And that clarity of your own thinking will increase the likelihood that you're going to understand it in your own mind, because my thoughts are so crystal clear, I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? So in the pitch process, if one's pitching, if they unequivocally see their vision in their mind's eye, and they're so clear in their thinking, there's a higher likelihood they're going to be able to clearly communicate their thought to others so that others get it.
Love it. Okay. And then what happens at the end? I mean, is there is there a reflection sort of piece of this, during the class afterwards? Are they writing something up, or is there, what do you do with it after going through this?
Okay. So with the exercises that I create and write and this sort of thing, I urge faculty, instructors, whoever's playing with this exercise in their own class, they're adopting it, to adapt it to their own needs as well. Like if you think a reflection component is valuable and you want students to take out their laptops or pen and paper and write about the experience and then maybe have a group dialogue, awesome. Whatever you think is right, for your class, and you want to expand upon the purpose. But in my own class, we have a group conversation. How was that experience? What did you learn? And then I review, from the top. I tell them what they're going to learn. We go through the exercise, and then we communicate again what they learned. So really, I would say that that's up to the instructor, as is the instructor's role in facilitating an environment of play and non-judgment. Right? Because if the instructor's judging them and sort of insinuating that they're right or wrong, right, it defeats the whole purpose of the exercise. So the instructor's got to foster that environment, and that's really up to the instructor entirely.
Gotcha. Okay. And have you had any sort of aha moments, or any really big kind of epiphanies, where you're learning and you've significantly adapted the exercise, right? Where you maybe tried something and you just had to really take a left turn, or I mean, has this been a pretty consistent, use of this exercise for you?
Okay, so a lot of the exercises that I create, I've created many at this point, probably about 100 or so. Very often they come to my mind like an impulse as I'm like turning the doorknob of the classroom, right? And literally walking in the class, I get an idea. And I'm like, what? I think I'm just going to run with this. I'm going to play with it in class and see how students respond. And then that becomes a process of, adaptation and evolution until I figure out the ideal model for my class purposes.
Yeah.
And so the answer is yes. So I used to start with just the "what are you doing" exercise. And but then I discovered this technique of, imagine you're at the movie, see the image in your mind's eye, and then associate an action, and incorporating that into the exercise, which was not part of my theatrical training. I found that their times would just go, they could do it indefinitely. So I would then take this into another exercise called collective brainstorming. When we have these rules, and I think this is very common in a lot of different environments, IDEO and others and such. They have rules to brainstorm, build off each other's ideas, don't judge your thoughts, get into a sense of play.
Yeah.
But this is directly applicable. So if you say, it's fruit's the example of the day apparently, but if you say banana and I'm like, oh, wait, how about apple, right? Like some students will get really offended by me saying apple and they said banana. They're like, man, why didn't you run with banana? But I wouldn't have thought of apple had you not said banana, right? So it's an association, and this is that exercise as well, right? So I said apple and you said eating an apple. It's same.
Right. Interesting. So you've kind of brought up, right, you have this portfolio of exercises, and you've always been very generous about sharing those and whatnot. So where can people find more of these exercises that you've come up with? How do people get their hands on more of this stuff?
Thanks for asking. So got a book coming out, and in this book there's 65 experiential exercises, and it's broken up into 3 different categories, which are ideation, action, it's got a heavy bias towards action, and reflection. It's the book is called Classroom Exercises for Entrepreneurship, the Cross-Disciplinary Approach. It's published by Edward Elgar, and it comes out this April. So I'm super excited about that. And I actually thank you for your support and your inspiration in this book. You didn't know that, but I'm sending you a copy.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
You've been,
yeah.
It's an online resource. I have a website called artsentrepreneurshipgames.com. And even though there's arts entrepreneurship in the title, these are really cross-disciplinary in focus, hence the book title. Whether you're teaching business or engineering, entrepreneurship, whatever, surely you can gain something from these exercises and adopt it.
Yeah, and that's something I've always really appreciated about, the exercises that you come up with and that you share is you come from this arts background, right? And I come from more traditional business background. But it's super easy for me to pick up what you've done and to use it in my class and use it effectively, right? So there really isn't a problem with, the translation, right? Or with any sort of context. So, I mean, you've done a really good job of putting things together where they're pretty easy to put to use. To your point of, thinking about it as you're turning the doorknob, right? It's like, shit, I got a class in like 2 hours. Let me see what Jim's got, right? And I mean, but that's a source and the way you've done that. And so that's what's exciting to me about the book, because that's just, I envision, right? It's on the bookshelf. You grab the book, you're looking for something in the reflection category or whatever. And like, here's some stuff that you can pretty quickly adapt to the class. Much like this exercise, right? It doesn't take a whole lot of prep time. Doesn't take a whole lot of, you have to go run a whole bunch of copies or, read through a whole bunch of stuff to prepare for it. I mean, it's something that you can pretty easily put into place.
So I framed this book as a cookbook of sorts. And the idea is you're the chef and you're serving your students a meal, if you will. Whatever tastes good, then serve it to them. And whatever tastes bad, don't incorporate it, right? And then I put this section called recipes at the very end, where it's like, okay, are you teaching how to attract capital? Or, here's 7 different exercises that you can implement in sequential order. Offer that. And I've also listed learning outcomes or learning objectives in the book, which can be directly incorporated into a syllabus. I've specified whether the exercise is short, medium, or long, and what the key topics are that are addressed in the exercise, so people can literally, like a cookbook, sort of thumb through it and be like, cool, I'll use that. And I've offered a series of rubrics in some instances, and the idea is that people can, if they wish, they can photocopy it. They may need to blow it up a little bit, and they can evaluate students by those rubrics.
Great. Well, I look forward to it, and we'll certainly do our best to let people know about it and push them to check it out, because I think it's a wonderful resource for anybody who's teaching any kind of entrepreneurship classroom at any level. So that's part of why we wanted to invite you on and showcase some of the work you're doing, because it's really a good fit for the community we're trying to build and getting people to try more experiential kind of things and experiment with how we teach, and you do a wonderful job of it.
And I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. It's necessary. I really believe that. And congratulations on this platform. And it's a joy to be a part of it.
Good deal. Well, once again, I've been talking to Jim Hart, the Director of Arts Entrepreneurship at the Meadows School of the Arts at Southern Methodist University. Also currently the interim chair, maybe for a little while longer anyway, of arts management and arts entrepreneurship. So again, thank you so much, Jim, for sharing some time and your exercises. And we look forward to seeing what's next for you.
My great pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, Don.
Thank you.